like the Skinwalker, who is also like a vampire now and can become not just a wolf but any animal in order, and it just keeps expanding to the point where it becomes borderline. All right, I can't believe this now.
Yeah. How about this? How about this though? Like 10 years ago, for example, right? I was sick in bed with a fever. Okay, and
you were cursed.
Went to bed. Yeah, I was cursed by corpse poison.
Right.
But I was sick in bed, and I woke up, and I couldn't see. Okay, and I was completely blind. There was nothing on my face. It was daytime, and I was like touching my face and trying to figure it out. And instead of like getting up and going to the doctor, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I was in that like I just woke up, sort of like dream haze.
Oh yeah. That can be very scary.
Yeah, and so I was very, very scared. I felt like panic in my whole body. But instead of doing anything about it, I just grabbed my sheets, put them back over my head, and tried to fall back asleep. And when I woke up again and I could see again, I was just happy for things to be back to normal.
Did you ever?
You know what I mean?
Did you ever go to the doctor?
I'm trying to, yeah. So wait, what do you mean though? What is the purpose of the story? I guess I'm asking.
If the goat goes back to normal, right?
Yeah.
Like, maybe I wouldn't investigate further.
Oh, because in your mind, you're like, maybe if I just go to sleep and wake up, everything will be normal and I don't have to deal with this again.
So it's you're saying that he possibly would then be like, oh, it must have been hallucinating.
Like, you're just like, oh, like, fuck, like, what the fuck was that? I don't know. Am I crazy? I would think that I was crazy before I believed that I saw a goat standing on its hind legs.
But the stories or the information that I was given is that these skinwalkers feed off fear. Right? And so if they feed off fear,
why didn't he keep?
Confusion isn't fear. Confusion's confusion.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it's like a great trick, and you're like, oh man, he's gonna be up all night trying to figure out if I'm real. But if I guess I'm saying, I'd probably be a gluttonous skinwalker. Yeah. Be like, give me that fear, baby. I just don't.
I can't presume to understand the intricacies of Navajo black magic, but maybe there's quotas. Maybe you just got to do what you got to do. Like, maybe it was like, all right, today, like, the voice from the blackness tells you, like, go laugh at those shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
It could.
I don't question the mythos behind stuff like this. I feel this is the way I always feel about things like this, where, especially if it's a native story or if it's a story from like a Celtic culture or a like something where the average, like, Joe on the street, because it's not their way of life, it's very, very different, and so they want to put because it's so different, because it's ancient, it must be special and must be mythical and supernatural, and so they add more importance to what is being told, rather than just, I'm sure if you talked with the vast majority of native peoples, they'd be like, it's just, it's a myth. It's a myth.
Yeah.
And it's something like in the ancient Greece legends and myths.
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, no, that's totally true. Oh man, that Minotaur, he's out there.
Or maybe they're just not telling. Maybe they're just not telling you the real shit because they don't trust you, though.
But I think that's another part of it too, is people think because we as a society, especially in America, wronged the native people so much that they're keeping stuff from us, so that must also be it, because they don't trust us. And it's one of those things where, okay, sure, maybe, but I don't think that we'd go this long without someone. I don't know. It just doesn't.
I mean, I see what you're saying. Like, it's interesting too, because you talk about other cultures, and like naturally when we're researching these things, you do come across skinwalker type monsters in other cultures, and while they have kind of like the same base set of powers, their purpose and what they do and why they're around and how they become those things are wildly different than what the Navajos say.
So that's the stuff that's less like, I don't know, like you read these stories and you're like, okay, like this happened, I don't know what it was.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. But, the Navajo do, because they have a story about something like that. So they say, oh, that was a skinwalker.
Right.
But you never know. You never know what's actually out there. And that's the thing about this that really scares me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you. Just like, I can't imagine driving around midnight in like the middle of the desert and coming across something that you just can't quite figure out what it was. But anyway, moving on. So that's one of their weaknesses. they can't cross into your home unless you invite them in. Other things that can kill them. There's 2 known ways of being able to kill a skinwalker. One, if you know the identity of, this is classic trope, if you know the identity of a skinwalker and speak their full name, the skinwalker would either die or get sick, really, really sick and die, or just get really, really sick from all the wrongs that they've done, depending on how severely bad their wrongdoings were, I guess. Again, the explanation of it is really vague. It's very much like, you can speak their name in full, and either they'll die or they'll get sick, one or the other. What will happen? Well, I guess it depends on how evil they are. So
Did they kill their family member and then fuck the corpse?
Right.
Or did they just...
Are they like a low-ranking skinwalker, or are they like a high-ranking skinwalker? And I guess that'll depend on where they rank, will determine if they die. But the coolest way to kill a skinwalker, the best way, is what I said earlier, where you shoot a bullet in the back of their neck with a bullet that was dipped in ash.
Which is how Hellboy kills a skinwalker.
Is it really?
No. I just like I don't like a bullet. Like that's probably not in the Navajo legends.
Have any of you read Dresden Files? I'm curious.
No, I've never actually read it. As much as I like am like always being recommended it.
Have you Jesse at all?
No.
Okay, so I've only read the first book of the Red Dresden Files. First of all, phenomenal first book. I'm looking forward to reading more. But apparently, so Dresden Files, long story short, is a fiction novel series about a wizard in modern day living in Chicago who's like a private eye and deals with all the supernatural crimes around the city. Really kind of cool premise. And I guess he deals with skinwalkers pretty often as information brokers and stuff. So I was just curious if you had read it, if they represent some of the weaknesses of skinwalkers from fact, or if they just make them up.
No, I gotta get into that. I should just take, now that I'm like on here, I feel like I should take the dive.
I mean, they're really easy reads. Like they're really
that's
quick.
what I've always heard, is that they're just kind of like pulpy.
I blasted through the first book in like a day and a half, and I was done.
Was that like recently?
Yeah, it was within the past 6 months.
Cool.
Yeah, there's like 13 or 14 books. They're good. They're fun.
Oh boy.
The first
All
one.
right.
But that's like the 2 known ways to kill a skinwalker. Speak his full name, like any typical paranormal thing. To get rid of it, you speak it's like Mixelplick from Superman or whatever his name is, or
right.
Pixelplim or whatever. And then he'll either die or get really sick. I guess like I don't know if I would ever risk just speaking the name of a skinwalker, because if he doesn't die and he just gets really sick, I'm assuming he has like a small list of people who probably know his name in full, and if he just doesn't die, he just goes looking for these people and starts killing them to make sure nobody ever knows his name. That's what I would do as a skinwalker. If I got really sick and I was just like, oh, somebody spoke my name, all right, well, there's like 5 people who know me.
Skinwalker strats.
Yeah, skinwalker strats. And then the bullet in the back of the spine. And that's like the 2 ways to kill him. And that's your basic Navajo lore. That's your basic skinwalker Navajo lore. They're normal people who want to become these witches. And in order to do so, they hurt or injure or kill a civilian, an innocent. If they really want to get rid of their soul completely, they kill somebody that they know that's a close blood tie, incest, or a necrophilia. And you gain these abilities to turn into an animal or possibly a human, and possibly mind control and possibly mind read, and get all these really neat powers. And you subsist off of fear. And you kind of, what your purpose is and what you do is really vague and unknown, and why they're around. And there's also theories out there that I really didn't want to get into because they're ridiculous, that actually involve aliens. Which we will.
Now we can talk about more at Skinwalker Ranch.
I was going to say, when we get to Skinwalker Ranch, I think that's where we're going to start talking about the Skinwalkers and their potential alien ties that they have.
Yeah.
The thing about a lot of just supernatural stuff is if you try hard enough, you can tie it to aliens.
Every time.
Every single time. When I went to Skinwalker Ranch, I was like, oh, UFOs, of course UFOs. So, yeah, there's possible things. So, Jesse, you have been dunked headfirst into the quick learning of what a skinwalker is. What do you think?
Truthfully, I love the concept of a skinwalker.
Me
I think
too.
it's very cool. The idea of someone who can change their shape, and I think it's something that a lot of people would want. But I like the twist that it's a bad thing,
Right.
To be able to do this. People who do this are actually evil. I would love to know the good version of it, and if they have like a cool supernatural underground war, because that would be great. But I also think that everything you said still has that vibe of a very cool myth, and something that in native culture was a thing that was used to explain supernatural stuff or things that appeared supernatural, and was used as sort of a don't go out late at night because there's skinwalkers out there. Used to also, if you were just an asshole and you wanted to make like a scary story and freak people out, I feel the reason why it's a trickster god related kind of thing is because
It's easy to hide the evidence that way.
but also it's kind of
convenient.
good, not just convenient, but like the person telling the story is the embodiment of that trick, right? That the people telling the story, they're making BS up, tricking you into getting scared, and they're part of that trickster god mentality, right? I think it's very cute and cool. I don't necessarily believe any of it, but I think the lore behind it's fascinating, and I can't wait to see how this translates into
Real
Skinwalker Ranch, whatever the hell that is,
dude.
and how this all. I'm really curious where we're about to go.
This creature gets so much scarier in like primary sources.
Yes, that's what we're going. A few that I picked. So there's a fuck ton of stories out there, and I found a website that was kind of aggregated some of the best ones out there. So that's where I grabbed 3 stories from. One we can each read, and there's some really like creepy shit involved in them. Jesse, before we get into the stories, you did mention the good version of it. The good version of it, of a skinwalker, is really just the way they talk about it is just the spiritual healers. They don't call what they do magic or witchcraft. They just call it healing via the spirits. And they have the ability, and again, I didn't really put it in here because it didn't really matter all that much, but from what I understand, the Navajo healers have the ability to make like special holy totems that will keep skinwalkers away. They can like say prayers to heal those who have been cursed by a skinwalker. So like they have like the priests in each village that can help negate the skinwalker curses and stuff, and can create a barrier of protection from them. That's like the good. That's like the light versus the void, if you want.
Now I'm just imagining like Navajo Salem's Lot, like that'd be a great story.
Yeah, that would be good. All right, so we've got 3 stories. I'll read the first one. It's relatively short. Alex will read the second one, and Jesse will read the third one, which is okay. I've got all 3 there. So these are pretty creepy, and
I have not read through these at all yet, so I'm psyched.
Yeah, these are really, really fun. So I'll start with the first one. This one is about, from my understand, like a young teenage girl. This happened to her when she was like a young teenager. My grandmother on my mother's side has always been very superstitious.
No.
Come on, no. That's not a good voice for her. Come on, that's a great voice for a young 13-year-old girl. I'm going with it. You can't stop me.
No.
For lack of a better word, she's not religious, but she does believe in a lot of paranormal stuff.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for listening.
Listen, it's not that long. Her mother was full-blooded Navajo and her father was Irish. Either way, she'd never been anywhere east of Montana and grew up in Nevada. One year when I was in grade school, we went to visit her. Most of the visit was pretty uneventful, typical boring old people stuff, except she always kept her curtains drawn shut and would always peek out the window when someone asked what she was doing. She would simply reply, Yanal Delushi is watching me. This went on for nearly the entire visit until a few days before we were due to leave. My grandmother and my then baby brother, he's 19 now, LOL, were in front of the yard that evening, planting flowers, when all of a sudden my grandmother starts shouting, Insert little brother's name here! Get away from that creature! It's not safe! Of course, being in Nevada, we all assumed that my brother had found a scorpion or a rattlesnake, so we all ran outside to see my grandmother clutching my little brother and shaking in terror against the side of the house. Standing out in the yard was a large, black, Great Dane-sized dog. It was staring at my grandmother with an intensity I'd never seen before. It looked up at us, gave us a little huff, and bounded off. I don't remember if it moved unusually fast or not, but do remember it had really deep yellow eyes. When my mother asked my grandmother what happened, she kept repeating, "The Yanaldushi has found me." She then moved a couple weeks after that.
Woof.
There you go. That's the less out of the three. That's like the less weird one. Not sure why the dog ran off and huffed. He like seemed frustrated, I guess. And the idea that this thing has been hunting her grandmother for however long, and every day she's peeking out. It's kind of creepy. I can't imagine being hunted by this animal creature, the skinwalker, and then just having to move 2 weeks later because this Great Dane-sized dog creature found her and ran off.
That's funny because late in my grandmother's life, she started to talk about these ghosts, this ghost or something that was like in her house, and that was like kind of like it was similar. It's like, you know, for the most part, it was always a normal visit to grandma's house. You know, she'd cook or whatever, hang out. But then, like, every once in a while, like, she'd be like, man, I didn't get any sleep last night because, like, this ghost was just, like, walking around the house, and I was, like, in my room, terrified of this ghost. It's, like, really weird to hear my grandmother talk like that because she never...
That's actually interesting because my grandmother grew up in the 20s, and she's my great-grandmother, rather. She's still alive today, and she will always talk about how she had 2 little kid ghosts living in her apartment when she was a kid, or in her house that she lived in. And at night, they would always run up and down the hallway and eventually jump onto the bed that they were sleeping in. They wouldn't see anything, but they would feel it. Kind of cool.
It's so creepy. It's just
Right?
like, I don't know what that is. It's weird because my grandma never talked about. She was never like into that shit, and then all of a sudden, like, there's a ghost in my house.
Well, I think it has to do with that idea that your parents or your grandparents, as a child, you see them differently than any other person, right? Because they're your grandparents or parents, and they're special and they're above everyone else. And it's not until much later in life you discover the weird quirks that your parents had or that your people in your family had, and so you realize, oh, they're human too. So I think a lot of people the idea that you're weirded out by that, I think, is like you not expecting someone who you revere so highly of having like human,
like being paranoid
flaws.
Yeah. I feel you. How about this one?
I'm ready.
It's at my grandma's house.
Always the grandma.
Yeah, I know. It was August, and my cousins' ages range from 10 to 15, and I was the oldest, being 15.
The most credible then.
Yeah. I was staying with a 10, 13, and 14-year-old. We stayed up telling scary stories often, but one night a few weeks in, we decided to make a campfire out back. My grandma's house is in a rural suburb. The neighbors aren't too far when you're driving down the road to her house, but in the backyard, it's thick forest with man-made paths through it. Each house is on a hill, so only part of the basement was actually underground. That isn't important until later, though, so we're towards the east side of her yard in the smallest patch of open land. You couldn't see the neighboring yards from there, and there was probably 3/4 mile to each side of us that belonged to my grandma. Okay. It was maybe 11 at night, and we were playing Truth or Dare after telling scary stories, and my 14-year-old cousin dared me and the 13-year-old to go walk through the paths for 10 minutes or so. I said yes right away, as I wasn't easily scared and rather level-headed, but my younger cousin was a bit more hesitant. We didn't bring a flashlight because it wasn't pitch dark yet, and we could see enough to not die. We were walking through the paths for about 5 minutes and could barely see the fire through the trees when we decided to turn. In the middle of the path was a large dog-like creature hunched over with its front hands an inch from the ground. What I remember most was how its eyes were so fucking bright white, and it was humanoid dog-shaped with a human-like head, but a dog-like body, but human hands and feet. It looked right at us, and I know I was paralyzed with fear as it dashed away the opposite way from us, towards a creek that ran through the yard. Eventually, my cousin and I screamed bloody effing murder, and the other cousins and my grandma ran to us. I don't remember much here because I was really disoriented and I couldn't think properly, but I did wake up in bed, so I assumed that I was brought up to the house. All the kids slept in the basement in a big room with sliding glass doors to the outside, as the room was on the side that wasn't underground. My bed was pressed against a big glass window, and I couldn't see my cousins playing outside down below. The house is in Michigan, so it gets slightly chilly even in the end of August, and there was a slight breeze, so I put on a jacket and ran to join them outside, skipping breakfast and not wanting to miss out on anything fun. When I got down, I could tell they weren't playing, but rather running to get my grandma. Her dogs, both of them, were dead, ripped up. That night, we went to bed early. I woke up at maybe 2 in the morning because I felt something hit my head. My cousins were all sitting on the double bed opposite me on the other side of the room. There was one bunk bed and 2 double beds. The double beds for me and my 14-year-old cousin. They were being quiet and staring at me. The 13-year-old nodded his head towards the window.